Hello, my name is Russell Lucas and I am a theatre maker and I talk to other theatre makers. So I spoke earlier to Emma Taylor, who is the artistic director of the Canal Cafe Theatre in London. And Emma's theatre is what you could call the old school way of making theatre, which is sell your tickets, use the money to make new shows. And when the pandemic hit, I was very concerned about how the canal would survive. And so I wanted to get Emma on the channel because she ended up clinching the emergency funding for the space. So, yeah, she unpacks that, how she got it, what strategy she used, and what is the future for the venue. Enjoy. Hello, Emma. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. Hi.
Thank you for coming on the channel to talk to us today.
You're very
Um,
well.
You're going to talk about the funding, the emergency funding that you got for the Canal Cafe Theatre in today's interview. But I'll just kind of preface how we know each other. We worked together several times on original plays, and I think we were the first to put a play on the floor in the Canal Cafe Theatre. We didn't do it on the Prost, did we? We did it in the thrust on the floor. We changed the whole thing around. So we went through lots of adventures with each other over the years. Um, and I wanted to get you on the channel not only because to share, what happened with the Canal Cafe Theatre with the emergency funding, but also because it occurred to me when the lockdown happened that your venue is the classic example of making theatre in that you sell a ticket, you then have to make a show based on the sale of that ticket. You don't have any private funding at all. You're kind of like the holy grail of theatre that's been lost, and caveat we may all have to go back to. So I was very, very happy when I found out that you got emergency funding. So could you tell us, how did that come about? Was there a strategy in place? What were the couple of steps along the way that you managed to get the funding in the end?
There was no strategy in place at all. It was pure, I'm going to say, response as opposed to reaction, because I think myself and my team, we responded to the just life-changing events which we've all endured since March in the UK. And when I look back, it's just in the very distant, the very near past. So we're still very much in the aftermath and living in the reality of what has happened. And my analogy really is, we hear this cliche frequently about sinking or swimming, and how were we going to survive? And we were all in the same boat. John Plews is heading up and has done for several years the SIT, the Society of Independent Theatre. And so thank God we had that community, which we sort of tapped into a little bit before, but in times of need, we really come together, and we had a Zoom meeting with the fringe theatres, the pub theatres, not just in London, but throughout the UK as well. And the same with the Pleasance, because News Review was scheduled to go up to the Fringe this year, as we have done every year. Last year was our 40th anniversary. And so everything just was falling like dominoes. First there was the closure of the theatres, and then we were saying, well, at least we have Edinburgh, and then there's no Edinburgh. So there was no specific strategy in place, but we were sharing and pooling ideas and what can we do. And so although we have similarities, we're also unique beasts within ourselves, which is what makes this fabulous really is a kind of subculture of London, which we've just all taken for granted, and we've all managed brilliantly hitherto on, like you say, just good old-fashioned selling a ticket and making that work. When it doesn't work is when a pandemic happens and everything is literally pulled from underneath you. So thank God the Arts Council funding, the COVID-19 emergency fund, was announced. And I've never done a an ACE funding application in my life. That's not how, we've run Canal Cafe Theatre. I applaud, its existence and the fact that it can give people a track record, and that, people are able to go and make theatre using the fund. But it's something that we haven't wanted to tap into, because, if we can be self-sufficient, then give it to someone who needs it. And now we needed it. The difficulty was the fact that the opening question, well, there were 4 questions to even get, well, no, first, I mean, it is a beast. Anyone who knows Grantium, it's hideous. I'm not going to lie. And I actually wrote to my wonderful MP, I wrote to Emily Thornberry. This was just prior to the second, the 1.57 billion, however much it was, before that second round of help had been offered. And just complaining actually about how difficult it is to navigate that system, and that there are many systems that the government provides with really easy to use interfaces. And so my question is still out there. Why have you made it so difficult? Why do you make, for artists, we really do seem to be targeted. This isn't paranoia. This is, it makes no sense, but I'm not going to go on about, that. So getting to the 4 questions, there were 4 basic questions on the, to sort of, it was kind of, I felt a bit like, it was kind of like a Raiders of the Lost Ark. And how are you going to jump through these hoops, especially when you've never been faced with anything like this before? So there are 4 basic questions. What, what's the name of your business? Easy. What, are you based in London? And then the really grueling question was, do you have a track record of being in receipt of public funding, or words to that effect? And I thought, well, no, we don't. So what am I going to do? I can't lie. But then, what I've noticed as well in this journey with Grantium is that sometimes if you ticked the wrong box or said the wrong thing, then you would be thrown out and you couldn't get back in again. And just Annemiek van Elst, I hope I'm saying her name correctly, was my absolute savior. Annemiek had directed News Review in the past and had successfully has successful Arts Council funding in the past. So without her, I don't know, I wouldn't have been able to register on Grantium. So yeah, thank you, Annemiek. We'll have that beer at some point, even though I don't drink anymore. But anyway, so I left that box unticked, and I got through to the next page, and it came up with, given the information that you've supplied so far, it looks unlikely that you'll be able to continue. I thought, oh shit, okay, then what have I got to lose? I'm going to go back. I'm going to tick yes, because they can kick me out later on. But I at least have to have felt that I've got past the first hurdle. And when we did have one of these big SIT Zoom meetings, I think a lot of my peers from other venues, we were, many of us, not all of us, because other fringe theatres, small independent theatres, obviously have a different remit and are used to applying successfully for funding, but many of us aren't. And I've spoken to some people say, oh, I wish we'd done that. And like I said, I wasn't trying to be duplicitous, but I just, this was the life or death of the theatre. Absolutely. There was no way we could have survived. Overnight, we just plunged into a huge amount of debt. And we just, my team, we just managed to get back onto an even keel, but, from another time. And then we were just really in a great, strong position. And then all of a sudden this happened, the timing, well, there's never going to be a great timing for this. So I ticked yes to that box, and then I got through, and then I got through to the next, then everything opened up, and then the application form proper appeared, and I was able to to really then go to work. And it felt, I mean, I don't have a PhD, but I was working around the clock, just researching, and looking as well from the comedy aspect. And at some point I came across some statistics which were really quite hideous. I think only 3% of any historic funding, ACE funding, has gone to comedy, which is, it is shocking. And then really putting salt into the wound, I discovered that somebody who'd done a dissertation or a PhD on why that was, he got the funding. And I think there was even a line such as, yeah, well, stand-ups don't want the money, they want the struggles. Are you kidding me? Yeah, I don't know a single stand-up who's going to say, here's 10 grand. No, mate, I'll do it. Anyway, that's also by the by. But in terms of then a strategy that I needed to develop was I couldn't focus too much on the comedy aspect, because I knew that would be frowned at, unfortunately. So there is a sense of having to literally tick boxes and what is going to get us the funding in order to survive. And we're not just, with no disrespect to, just comedy clubs. That's not what I'm saying. But as you well know, the projects that we've worked on together, we have a great history of really tasteful revivals as well, and a lot of new writing. So I wanted to give a broad view of everything that we do. And so that's what happened. And I just spoke to so many people. And it was actually it was a very, although it was a daunting process, it was actually a really beautiful process, because I started having conversations with people who I hadn't spoken to in many years, and then just asking them about their work and where they are now, and what News Review did for them, and what, being at the Canal Cafe did for them. And I think something else which just really touched me and still moves me to this day is the outpouring of love and offers of support from years back, from people who, have really fond memories of their time at the Canal Cafe. Mm. So yeah, in a very big nutshell, that was sort of the part of the process. Yeah.
It sounds like it was collaborative, wasn't it? It was conversations that then nourished your application, and then after a while, the other, like you say, you tapped into the histrionics of News Review and the Canal Cafe Theatre itself, and people coming forward, and then remembering that the venue is pliable, and it's done plays, it's done musicals, it's done comedy, etc., etc., etc. So it's actually got a very, very rich history, and also I would say it's a wonderful platform for people who have just graduated as well, or if people want to come and try stuff out, because it's got that history again. So it's wonderful that you got it. Just going back to your point about that, you said that you spoke to some other venue people, venue operators, and they said they wish they'd gone for it. If there's anybody watching this now who is thinking about applying for any sort of funding or emergency funding in the future, what did you learn and what could you share? Because as you say, this was your first time. So in some ways you're ripe for harvesting your knowledge. You haven't spent 10, 15 years doing arts application funds. You will come with a fresh view, which I think is really, really useful. So what type of things could you share now for us?
It's a really good question. What was wonderful, and I think the reason that we actually got the application is that as I went through the application, and as I talked to different people and gleaned aspects from what they were saying, and how it could be applicable to our application, it was actually, so it was at the 11th hour. And the other thing is, if you are doing Arts Council applications, and I haven't applied for the second round, which the deadline is, I believe, tomorrow, Friday, as we're recording this, at 12 noon. I think that was probably geared to larger theatres, because the starting amount was £50,000, and I think a lot of that was for larger theatres who possibly need to mothball. And there were, again, other questions in there which were really sort of kicking us out from the get-go. But the fascinating thing was, it's kind of at the 11th hour, I spoke to David Byrne from New Diorama, and David has just been an absolute saint. I'm sure he won't mind me saying that about him, because he's helped me and so many other people, artists, venues. And he actually corresponded with me, so really late at night, 11:30 at night. He said, well, I'll have a look. If you want me to read through your application, I'll do it in the morning. And the other thing is, just a technical hint, Grantium kind of grinds to a halt. You're filling in stuff, and then it takes so long, because the whole country is on the website at the same time, and it just can't cope with that level of demand. So it's very slow, it's very frustrating. You get very scared. What if I miss the deadline because of something technical? So I planned to, I think I actually submitted around 2 o'clock in the morning. And I had, Shannon was working on the account, sort of on the other side of the world, and Annemiek, we were doing these 3-way calls just to get this application in on time. And what David actually pointed out to me was that, we have received, in terms of our co-productions, me ticking that initial box wasn't actually a lie. And when I sat back and just examined actually all the things that we've done over the years, of course we've been in receipt of public funding. In terms of our co-productions, every year we go to Edinburgh, so we're in partnership with the Underbelly or the Pleasance, who receive funding, let's say from I don't know, University of Edinburgh or whoever else they may get their funding from. But, this is the thing about, co-creating in theatre, which we do all the time. And many things that we take for granted because we're not always assessing what we've done, and we're not, if you don't need to have an accountability sheet, then you just, we don't specifically do that. And we've done so much work for the BBC, who are obviously in receipt of public funding. And it was when David pointed that out to me. He said, "Well, do you do work with the BBC?" So yeah, all the time. We've done Global Women in the News. We've done the AI thing last year. We're often a go-to for many of their in-house things in the BBC Radio Theatre. I thought, oh yeah, we do. They said, yeah, and you do this and you do that. And so it needed somebody with that outside eye and that knowledge. To actually say, no, you do tick the box. So that would be a message that I'd love to give to other people, that you probably are ticking these boxes without even realizing it. So for example, another aspect of the application, in terms of, the Let's Create, which the Arts Council are promoting at the moment, I was able then to mention the work that we've done with Alice Sinclair and the charity work that she does in the local community of, Little Venice and Maida Vale. And we hosted the circle, and that happened, I think, just in October of November. So, quite a harrowing evening of personal stories and a panel about FGM. And so there's things that that we were already doing that we don't really, it seems crass to, pat yourselves on the back for, and that's not what I'm saying that we do, but it's something that we were doing that we weren't talking about because, we just, that's just what we do. So I think the advice would be, look at everything that you are doing. And when you were saying before about the graduate work, Adam Morley, who's an associate and friend of ours, the work that he's now doing in lockdown to help specifically graduates who didn't have a showcase. So we're supporting that in any way that we can, when we can. I mean, we're in a situation where we just don't know yet when we're going to open, because we can't really open on an ad hoc basis, and we can't open either we're open or we're not. This kind of wishy-washy directive doesn't work for us, and I know it can work for some other small theatres, but it just doesn't work for our setup right now.
Yeah, so it sounds like what you're saying is that it's time to cash in your chips, but also to look back at your heritage of the stuff that you've done, because you're absolutely right. If you really think about it, somebody somewhere you will have worked with will have had some sort of public funding maybe at some point, and then that puts you into, like you say, another tick box. It's a different area.
Yes. Yeah. Definitely.
So with this in mind, just touching on what you just said as our last question, you're saying that you can't really open until you're kind of back to whatever the normal is. What's coming in your head? Have you got some sort of plan? Is Canal Cafe Theatre going to have a bit of a recon in the way it's executed, or is it going to change? Have you got a different slant in it now? Are you waiting until a little bit longer before you make a decision, or do you see that it's going to go back to the way it used to be?
I think it's twofold. I've been having a lot of conversations and a few face-to-face meetings now with people, which has been great because Shannon and Daisy have been furloughed. There are 2 members of staff. So, and I've always been on a freelance basis contract. So it's been wonderful for me as well that I've, you know, when I used to program the theatre, and I've done a bit of programming, people would often still, you know, from sort of former times would say, oh, Emma, you still program? I know, pass you on to Shannon. So I've been going in and having meetings with people, and it's been wonderful. So sort of revisiting that kind of programming past. In terms of programming, so obviously Canal Cafe, you know, we are both a producing house, and you know, we take outside hires, but we also we nurture the people that come to us. So it's not just, yeah, just tick this box and then you can have the theatre. You know, we are discerning in terms of who we program, so that it's, you know, that it works for, you know, we're not going to program somebody or a show that we don't think is going to work in the space. So obviously we are renowned for comedy. Even, I don't just mean, you know, everything has to have a comic element, but and that's not just what we do. But so, for example, we've got a company who I was having a talk with them with the view to possibly putting programming their one-person show. So I'm looking at a lot of one-person shows at the moment, which I wouldn't ordinarily, yeah, we may have done one or two there now and again, but at the moment, as and when we are able to reopen, it just seems to make sense. But they're also really fascinating stories. And one is, it's about mental health in the Asian community, because that has been quite a taboo, and it's something that I really want to program. And only this morning I've had to say I don't think we can, that was going to go ahead in October, and it's with a real heavy heart that we just can't have the theatre functioning on this sort of ad hoc basis. I had a staff meeting via Zoom with Daisy and Shannon a couple of days ago, and as much as, you know, we're all itching to do something, but we can't do anything half-hearted. And I think also because of our, you know, we do have a reputation, and we don't want, you know, whatever we do, we always want to do it to the best of our ability. And so at the moment, we don't feel that we can deliver that. And that's the same with News Review. One thing that we have done with News Review, we've made the podcast, which has been tremendous. So working with Sam Sheldon and Richard Baker, and now with Natasha Vasandani and Gary Jerry, who've taken over the sort of 6-episode slot. So that has been, again, an incredible creation which has come out of these, you know, unprecedented times, and will hopefully continue. Hopefully at some point, as you know, our listenership, if that's a word, increases, then, you know, we'll be able to monetize that in some way. We're thinking possibly of maybe doing an actual live show of News Review, but to be streamed, not in front of an audience. And yeah, we were due to do an Australian season or festival, which, you know, sort of built on what we did with the American season. And we had a meeting with David Finnegan, and that was all super exciting. We were planning to do that in May, and then we were hoping to do that in Kill Climate Deniers. That was going to be one of 3 plays that we were going to be producing in-house. And so then we said, okay, no, let's do it in October. That's not going to happen either. So yeah, things are afoot. Things will definitely change. I hope for the better. I hope we can, you know, see the silver lining in everything that's going on. But yeah, we need to sort of watch this space a bit longer.
Yeah, it's, all of your answer makes sense to where I'm at as well, personally, as a freelancer, that I think actually the theatre trade itself is in flux still. It feels like maybe we are coming out of something. We're not quite there yet, because there has to be some sort of reflection on how do we endure this? How do we endure it? If it comes again, what will we learn from this period to endure it in a different way, maybe? But yeah, you know, it's like a 3-hour conversation, this, isn't it? Because there's so many things to discuss. But yeah, all of that's really useful. It's enough for you and I to send the fireworks in the sky today. And then we'll look back on this interview and laugh, probably. Who knows? Okay, Emma, thank you so much for sparing the time and coming to talk to us today.
Thank you.
All right, bye.
Bye.